Hello, and welcome to the Songwriters Workshop.
Oh God, why am I here?
This is the series where I attempt to write songs based on the process and techniques of famous songwriters. Each video looks at a different songwriter's writing habits, musical inspirations, and creative process, while also including an original song written using those techniques. So let's take a look at our next songwriter. This video will look at singer-songwriter Tori Amos. Tori was born in 1963 in North Carolina, and showing immense skill on piano at a young age, she was accepted to the Peabody Conservatory of Music at age 5, the youngest person ever accepted. However, Tori would leave Peabody due to her interest in rock and pop music, especially Led Zeppelin and Stevie Wonder, and would begin playing piano bars at an early age, accompanied by her pastor father. At 21, Tori moved to LA to pursue a recording contract and formed the band Why Can't Tori Read, releasing an album under the same name in 1988. It was, however, a commercial failure and would lead Tori to reevaluate her creative output. Tori would spend a couple of years reconnecting with her piano and writing songs before releasing her first solo album, Little Earthquakes, in 1992. With Little Earthquakes being more focused on Tori's piano-centric singer-songwriter artistry, the album would become a breakthrough success, with great songs like Winter, Crucify, Me and a Gun, and Leather.
Hand me my leather.
For the next few decades, Tori would consistently release fantastic albums every couple of years, some of my favorites being Boys for Pele in 1996, the concept album Scarlet's Walk in 2002, and a cover album of songs written by men sung from a female perspective, Strange Little Girls, in 2001, in which she collaborated with author and friend Neil Gaiman, who wrote short stories to go along with each song, and iconic makeup artist Kevin Aucoin for a photo shoot with Tori dressed as each song's persona. Tori has 2 books to her name, which will serve as the research material for this video. First is the 2005 book Piece by Piece, written with music journalist Ann Powers, which covers her early songwriting career and artistic process, along with quotes from her band, touring crew, and management about her music and performance. The second is Resistance, a songwriter's journey of hope, change, and courage, released in 2020. In this book, we get more background on Tori's musical philosophy and the issues and activism that drives her creativity. Before we get started, here is a quote from Resistance that I tried to keep in mind as I attempted to tap into Tori's process. She says, "Artists don't have limited access to the universal creative force. Unlike a gardener and farmer who may have a certain number of acres they can work while the land recovers, we do not have those constraints. We just don't. The real estate of the universal creative force is infinite." So let's get started. In Resistance, Tori gives an example of what her process may look like for a song at its different stages of development. She outlines 4 points of the process that I use as my guidebook for the writing of my song. Tori says, "Sometimes I literally draw, or I should say scribble, my process on paper to concretize my process out of ether and onto something tangible. When I draw a circle, hibernating/healing may be one of the points. Another point on the circle may be the taking in phase, building the foundation for the eventual output or giving out, a third point. The fourth point on the circle would be the alignment of taking in and giving out." I decided to use these 4 points as the signposts for my writing process for this song. The first point on my journey was the hibernating/healing phase. This is taking care of yourself, both physically and mentally, in order to be in a state of being where you are able to be open to the song you will create. Tori says, "How we see the creative process can determine if our thoughts are either working with us to make art or working against us to keep us from the potential art we so want to make. Thoughts are such powerful inhibitors or helpful conspirators that we have to look at what they are up to, and then we can put certain practices in place. Finding this oneness with your thoughts is an important starting point in order to access the universal creative force that Tori mentioned. She says, Some writers create havoc in their own lives in order to bring this tension. which pushes them to a point that gives them new material. Trust me on this. There is new material out there, and enough for all of us. Someone asked me how I handle writer's block. My response was that I do not subscribe to that notion. That is a vortex of writer's masochism that I refuse to take part in. Of course, this sort of meditative awareness seeking is not something I can really film myself doing, so the video playing in the background right now is just me playing around on the piano. However, I think this does count as a sort of healing action, especially for Tori, who has said that she tries to play piano every day. Living and breathing with your instrument on a regular basis is good for songwriters. As Tori says, if you take away anything from this book, take this. Instruments do not betray us. We betray them and ourselves and our artistic souls. Betrayal, that's all down to us. The second point on Tori's circle is the taking in phase, through reading or observation, and this will invariably take me to a place of commitment and patience for the research that will lead to the seed gathering for the project. This is the part of Tori's process that affected me the most. Tori seems to do an immense amount of research on the subjects of her songs, both from talking with people who have had experience with the subject, and reading histories, articles, books, and anything else she can find, leading her to not only write from her personal experiences, but those of the collective consciousness. She says, "I've always told you the songs are separate from me. Yes, I write them, I gather the elements, but I do so by going around and listening to other people's stories. It's like being a chronicler, instead of just somebody who invents." She continues, "In my music, I use texts, histories, mythologies, my own stories, to construct other texts. I go to something very tangible, like a book or a visceral experience, to create something intangible." And Tori is doing this constantly, as you may never know when a piece of information will reveal something new about a song. She says, "I'm a songwriter 24 hours a day. As a songwriter, I'm gathering clues and possibilities all the time, whether I see a piano that day or not. As far back as little earthquakes, I began to realize that I need to have a library of notes, phrases, words, things that might prove useful at any given time. Half won't be used, and then the craft comes in, the part that is about painting a world. And part of this goes back to my playing around on the piano, as that is part of Tori's seed gathering for a song. She says, "I can play piano for myself for hours. Within a few hours, maybe a rhythm pattern will arise, and I'll write it down in my script, or usually I have a little tape recorder and just put my ideas into that. Tapes upon tapes upon tapes of ideas sit on the Bösendorfer. I find this part of the songwriting process takes the most discipline. At some stage, I have to sit down and listen to the hours and hours of jamming on tapes to find the nectar." Another aspect that I put into my taking in phase was something I have never tried before and I was a little trepidatious to implement. Tori says, "I don't know how this will play out, but I'm beginning to make a web out of the impressions that are coming to me. For a long time, I have written words and made simple drawings that interconnect. Not every element is utilized, but it's a way to grow and expand an idea. I have never been a good visual artist, though I do believe there is a strong connection between physical art and songwriting. But I did my best to try and put into drawings what I wanted to write about, and what I had been researching. And doing this exercise did help me step into the character of my song in a way. As Tori says, if you are a composer in your soul, you are constantly gathering details for characters that could be an extension of yourself, which all become seeds to plant in your song garden. So much of what you do in songwriting is role-playing. That's how you develop your different characters within a song. The songs give me the ability to live 1,000 lives. Doing this research and connecting with my song in these ways did better prepare me to write it, both from others' points of view on the subject and my own personal one. Tori says, "For a long time, I didn't realize that for certain songs to show themselves to me, they have to trust that I am ready to carry them. Some songs require willingness from me to research the subject that makes up their core. Others will work with me only if I have personally experienced the emotion they are investigating. The next part is the output or giving out phase. This is where the song comes together, and the sonic garden begins to reveal herself. Having done research on my subject, this is when I began crafting my song. Tori views songs as structures, saying, "Another way I often think about creation is in architectural terms. The songs don't spring whole into existence. They are built." I think of the structure of any particular song as a house. Sometimes you want the chorus to be the kitchen in a song. Sometimes you want the chorus to be the shower, very cleansing. The point is, even in terms of the emotion expressed, the shape matters before the story does. Without the structure, there's nowhere for the story to live. So I began building my song, piece by piece. I've always liked the imagery of a song as a building, with each section being different rooms of the structure. It makes it so that each part of the song feels unique based on what you want to convey, and you need to find what makes each room different. As Tori says, the songs are structures in themselves. Once I'm able to find a way into one of them, and that might be only a 4-bar phrase, that does not mean I have access to this song creature. Imagine that you've been able to let yourself into this fascinating architectural space, but you're only in one room and you don't know how to get to the other rooms because now there are no doorways. It becomes a sonic puzzle. I have to find the harmonic code, but once I do, the song seems to let me into another room. This is what songwriting requires, the ability to listen to the heart of the song. The final part of Tori's circle is the taking in and giving out. This goes somewhat hand in hand with the previous point, as Tori says, this is when the artist becomes a container, receiving the inspiration and sharing it all at the same time. Tori says that the most obvious example of this in my art is during live performance, but I also think it's an important part of the developmental process of a song as well. Throughout both books, Tori talks about a connection to that universal creative force. She talks about this force in many terms. She calls it the source, the muses, and also talks about connecting through archetypes like Mary Magdalene and Demeter. She says in Resistance, "As I've said for over 30 years now, I am only a co-creator of the songs. The muses and the songs themselves offer melodies, chords, words, and tones that allude to what the sound must be." And in Piece by Piece, the romantic myth of the artist says that you are the source. I have no illusion to that. Native Americans don't believe they are the source. They have access to the source, endless access, but don't get confused. So this taking in of a creative force is an important part of Tori's process, and she must be open and willing to work with this force in order to create. She is also aware that she must work in tandem with the force and not try to impose herself on it or become it. She says, "You have to be careful not to buy into that moment of projection. This is where working with archetypes is different from thinking you are one. When you start believing you are Aphrodite, or believe you are the Dark Prince, first of all, you have offended the divine, and I find you don't know how to access it anymore. The true shamans are the ones who have had to eat some humble pie and realize that they are only part of the creative process. I am not the source. You are not the source. But we can all tap into the source." So I tried to tap into this source while I was writing my song, and here's what I came up with.
An iron sun above, a sky streaked red. Pour a cup of coffee, mourn the dead. Can't come to the phone right now, bodies laid in gunpowder soil. Skin was torn, blood was boiled, and you stood idly by, suits drenched in oil, as flowers died on the vine. The prayers are quiet, the silence too silent. The prayers are quiet, the silence too silent. I don't need pity, I don't want your tears. I have no curses, only mirrors. We can either change or disappear. We face famine fields. The prayers are quiet, the silence too silent. The prayers are quiet, the silence too silent. You can keep your thoughts to yourselves. They won't reach heaven or
So that was the song, and I don't think I'm completely done with it yet. I think I still need more time to live with the song and let it grow more. I don't think I've reached a point where I fully understand Tori's source and how it affects me as a songwriter. But if you want to learn more about Tori's thoughts on songwriting and much more, I highly recommend her books Piece by Piece and Resistance. They are both filled with interesting details and amazing stories. Thank you for watching. Please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel for more videos in the future. I'll see you at the next song.